regarding stammering stuttering and assist people throughout the country with the problem. And one of the interesting aspects of it, obviously it's very interesting, as Barry reckons is that over the country there's about 1 in 100 that has some form of stammering or stuttering. Yeah, one interesting other aspects, and many interesting aspects, but I'm not going to do a speech. But he was involved, and he was there regarding the King's speech. So may I introduce Barry?
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your and ladies for your welcome. I'm going to speak from over here, if that's okay. Yes, well, a senior speech therapist at the Michael Palin Centre in London was quoted quite recently as saying how speech and language therapy has become the Cinderella of all therapies. But furthermore, the treatment of stammering has long since been regarded as the Cinderella of speech therapy. And from my own experience of speech and language therapy on the NHS, I would sadly have to agree with this statement. I once referred by your GP to the speech and language therapy department at the local hospital. You'll see a therapist there who doesn't just specialise in stammering, but will treat all sorts of speech-related problems, from stroke and larynx removal. So they're not just there to treat people who stammer. And you'll see somebody for probably about 6 weeks, spaced out over a few months. And during that time, you're shown things to try and help you to gain control of the disfluency. But outside of the therapy environment, you're very much on your own. There's nobody to call. You can't ring up the therapist one evening and say, I'm having a bit of a problem, can you help me out here? No, there's nobody to contact. You're on your own. And then once as those initial sessions finish, that's it. You're back out there. Why should this be? Well, it's only a stammer. Bit of an inconvenience maybe, the butt of an odd joke, but hey, there's worse things. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, there are worse things. That could be wrong. But knowing and understanding that never helped me. And certainly never helped a young man who I'm going to introduce you to now. You're going to see a short video of a man called Justin Eames, who I met on the Starfish project a few years ago. So, all being well, the technology works.
Perfect for him.
It's only a stammer. Ladies and gentlemen, if Justin were here this afternoon, he would be honest enough to tell you that he couldn't have coped for much longer. He would be honest enough to tell you that he did not envisage himself growing old or having a wife and family of his own. The physical effort of dealing with a stammer can be exhausting, but the emotional turmoil can be unbearable. Stammering is a roller coaster ride, but every time you go down, you never quite come back up enough. And yes, indeed, most people would say that stammering compared with other disabilities would not be assumed or considered to be a problem. They would probably describe stammering as an inconvenience. Well, what you see is not what you get. For many of those who stammer, their every waking moment is filled with fear, apprehension, and the dread of either speaking or being spoken to, leading to an existence of avoiding words, sounds, situations, relationships, friendships, and opportunities. Stammering interferes with the very attribute that sets human beings apart from all other animals, the aptitude for verbal communication. Speech is the basis of our culture, and the inability to communicate fluently affects every aspect of the stammerer's life and tends to push him or her outside of society. Stammering is not simply a speech difficulty. It is a serious communication problem. It undermines a person's self-esteem. It affects their interaction with others. It impedes education and seriously hampers employment potential. Now, for a fluent person, although nobody is truly fluent, it would be difficult to comprehend the multitude of everyday situations that presents fear to a stammerer. Most of us, if not all of us here, I'm sure, would take for granted going into a pub or restaurant to order food and drink. Not the stammerer, who may well get someone to order for them, or simply say, same again, following on from someone else's order, and then quietly make do with something that they didn't really want. Going for a haircut, buying a train ticket, or simply asking directions. The list is endless. Our society then tends to pigeonhole the stammerer, rarely taking the time to look beyond the impediment to the person. They simply see a stammer. And sadly, attitudes are formed by comedians who imitate for a laugh. I'm a great fan of the late Ronnie Barker. Absolutely, 100%. But his portrayal of Arkwright in Open All Hours never did the stammerer any favours. At the first Rotary talk that I did, I'm going back a few years and I won't name and shame, I was met by the president, bought a drink and introduced to the members, and the club clown came up and introduced himself to me. I say the club clown because he was the one who was going around and telling all the jokes. And he asked me what I was there to speak about. So I said, I'm here to talk about stammering. he says, "Oh, that'll be interesting. What won't it? You used to have a member here who stammered." I said, "Did you? So I bet you was popular." I thought, I'm going to have you later on. And so I explained to him about Ronnie Barker, as I'm doing now, and to give the man his due, he came up to me afterwards and he said, "Barry, I owe you an apology. I just didn't realise." The years of stammering for many will result in feelings of guilt, shame, humiliation, embarrassment, and even feelings of self-hate. But despite all this, the layman, stammering would still be viewed as non-life-threatening. But there have been many stories, many cases of people who stammer, whose fear of the telephone has been so great that they've been unable to call for medical help or make that essential appointment for a checkup. Like the case of the young lady who lived in Yorkshire at the time of the Ripper murders. Every evening she would get off of her homebound bus 2 stops early, at the name of a stop that she could say with less difficulty. And in effect, she took her life into her own hands by walking home through an area where 2 victims had already been found. I mentioned open all hours not doing the stammerer any favours. Fortunately, in recent years, we've had the King's Speech. Has everyone seen the film?
Yeah.
And I have to say that Colin Firth's portrayal of the King was very accurate, and this is probably the first film that there has been that accurately, that sincerely puts over what it can be like for somebody to have to live daily with a stammer. And so, at the Starfish Project, we treat stammering by empowering change. You see, stammering is a psychological habit that builds up over the years. There's nothing physically wrong with the vocal cords or any part of the mechanism that forms speech. It's a psychological habit, and for me it started one day at primary school when I was reciting the times table. I stumbled over 2 5s of 10 or something, and I can remember everybody laughing. And over the years the stammer changed and mutated to the point in my mid-40s where it pretty much controlled my life. And I'd always thought that if I could be trained as a singer, then that would help me to control the problem, because when you sing, you don't stammer. So I came across the Starfish Project that promoted this breathing technique to help control the disfluency, and actually the technique is the same technique that Lionel Lowe taught to King George VI all those years ago. Unfortunately, the King died before he had time to refine that technique. So we have to learn to speak on a quick and fast breath in through the mouth, which comes from the costal area of the diaphragm. It's the breath that opera singers use. It's the breath that any good television or radio presenter will use in their delivery. So it's a full and fast breath in through the mouth and speaking on the top of that breath. A few words, releasing your residual air, and then going again. So you're learning to breathe, speak, and release air in a cycle. That gives you some control. But technique alone is not enough. So we train with 2 safety nets. One is called a block and release, which I did a few moments ago. I stammered, but instead of pushing through with it, I let it go, and I took another breath, and the words came out. So one of the safety nets is block and release. The other safety net that we teach is what's called voluntary sliding, where if you're anticipating stumbling on a word, because for me my favourite words to stammer on was anything beginning with the S sound, like sausages. So even today, if I feel I'm going to stumble on that word, what I will do is I will slide on it. I'll slide it out, just to ease it out. And we also encourage a positive attitude, because actually when you stammer you become very negative. There is nothing positive about stammering whatsoever. And stammering just seems to come in on the back of feeling very, very small about yourself, very negative. So we encourage positive attitude. And also the big one, avoidance reduction. Because as stammerers, we will do anything to avoid those embarrassing situations, like speaking in front of a room full of people. You might just as well have asked me to build a rocket ship and fly to the moon. I would rather have done that than stood in front of a room full of people to speak. So we're encouraged with applying the technique to start challenging ourselves in those situations that we would have avoided. And that might have simply been asking for a train ticket. So apply that technique in those situations. Now, there's a saying that only you can do this, but you can't do it alone. And without a doubt, what makes Starfish successful is the support program, which takes place after you've done the initial 3-day course. We have a 24/7, 365 days of the year telephone support list, where someone having a bit of a problem can pick up the phone, speak to someone like myself, and we'll get them back on track. We also run local support groups. I run the Essex support group based in Essex, and the idea is that once a month those living locally will come together and we'll support each other, we'll practice technique, we'll practice situations that people are feeling a little bit apprehensive about. So the support is there. Oh, someone was going to do it. Had to be the president. Yeah. So the support is there, and you can, completely free of charge, go back on another course as often as you want. Now, the Starfish Project is a non-profit making organisation simply because we feel that it's wrong to take financial advantage of somebody's misfortune. And stammering just happens to be some people's misfortune. 1 in 100 people stammer. And so we don't take financial advantage. We could, if we wanted to, charge vast amounts of money, and people like Justin would pay. So the next clip you're going to see is Justin after 3-day course, so this would be the final day of the course, and then it runs into an interview which he did on GMTV a few years ago. So this is the kind of change that we're used to seeing in people. I'm sorry about the volume. Okay, so as you can see, quite a difference, and this is really not, it's not a rarity. Justin is not a special case that he just happened to get it all together and that's the change. This is the kind of change that we see in people, and by the end of the 3rd day you've got this control, but the real work starts when you go home, when you get back out into the real world. And the road to recovery is really a road with many twists and turns, and it goes on into the distance, probably for the rest of one's life. I mean, I still stammer. I still stammer every day, not in the way or anything like how I used to, but I can feel that it's still there below the surface. But with applying the technique that I've been instructed with, and to embrace the avoidance reduction, the positive attitude, it's changed my life, and it changes many other people's lives too. We run courses every month at a hotel in East Sussex, and we also run 2 children's courses per year, one in the Easter holidays and one in the summer holidays. The 3-day course costs £250. It's been £250 for as long as I can remember, and plans are that it will stay at £250, and you pay your accommodation, and we have a fantastic relationship with the hotel where we run the courses. They do us a fantastic deal, and I think bed and breakfast and evening meal is about £50 a night. So all in all, you're looking at about £400 to go through the Starfish project, which for some people is still a significant amount of money. So we do run a bursary whereby in cases of hardship we can put people through the course, and this really is where Rotary have been a fantastic support to the Starfish project over the years. Now, you know that we don't come cap in hand. I come to you today, I've given up a day's work to come and promote the Starfish project because of what they've done for me. So I'm giving my time back free of charge, and it's with my blessing. So yeah, you have been fantastic in supporting the Starfish project, and we thank you for that. And really, all that we ask is that you take away something from this afternoon which perhaps you've taken for granted. And if you have, that's okay, because there's things that I take for granted. I take my hearing for granted. I take my eyesight for granted. Maybe you've always taken for granted that you can just open your mouth and say what you want, when you want, and how you want. Because for 1% of the population, that's me, 1 in 100, that doesn't apply. I have to think about how I'm going to say what I'm going to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's please appreciate the wonderful gift that we have of communication. Thank you. Happy to take any questions. Yes, sir.
You say you do children's speech.
Yeah.
Is that sort of, I mean, someone I know, she's about 3, speech is very, very poor putting words together, and even when she says something, you have a job to actually know what she's saying. Is that the sort of thing that you...
How old is child? 3?
3, yeah.
Yeah.
Bit young?
Can't, yeah, a bit young. Only because you have to want to do this for yourself, and for somebody that old, young, sorry, it's a bit difficult, because of course mum and dad want it. Mum and dad want it for the child, but it's not until you realise that you've got to do something for yourself that you can start applying what we teach, because it's hard work. It's hard work, and with the children's courses, although we teach the same technique, the sessions are more informal. There's more breaks, and we go out and play football with them and stuff like that. So it's a much more sort of relaxed course, but nevertheless what we teach is the same, and of course we get the parents involved, because the parents are going to be there with the child, so the parents learn the technique as well. But yeah, it's always difficult in those very early years, but until you kind of reach the age of your teens,
You mentioned the film,
Yeah.
which I think most of us would have seen, trembled in a way, watch that man go through it.
yes.
And some of the techniques that were adopted by his advisor seem to be extreme. You don't go to those extremes.
We don't swear, and jump up and down on people's backs, I think it was. I think you do have to take a little bit of that with a pinch of salt. The projection is the most accurate part of what you saw on film, where he got the king standing up and projecting out of the window to, that's all part of it.
Barry, not a question, but just to support something you said earlier, I've put on the tables details of the Thurrock Melbourne Squire concert that's coming up. We had a chap called Peter who had not the sort of stammer that the gentleman on there had, but a bad stammer, and he could sing perfectly. I know because he stood next to me.
Do you know why?
No, but you said it was easier for him to sing. And also he developed Parkinson.
Right.
And he did get the shakes.
Yeah.
But we learned all our music, harmony and words, so he didn't have a problem with that. And he was able to sing with us almost up until the time he was dead.
The reason why you don't stammer when you sing is because you breathe from the costal area of the diaphragm, which is what we're taught.
So anybody's got a stammer and wants to join the Melbourne Squire.
Yes, sir.
It's another observation rather than a question. I'm really impressed with your delivery. I mean, I know a lot of people, even in the teaching profession, where you spend most of your day speaking to people. And it frustrates me when they and ah. Now that's not a stammer, it's a thought process.
Yeah.
Which means that you have an extra difficulty with your breathing technique, knowing what you've got to say in advance, being prepared, and then delivering all at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's something else to overcome, and I truly admire what you've done.
I did join Toastmasters International, not the red-coated Toastmasters, but the Toastmasters that run leadership and public speaking workshops. And that was actually recommended to me by Starfish because, having got some control over this thing, I suddenly realised that I had absolute zero speaking confidence and sort of I didn't have the diction, and so it was recommended I went to Toastmasters, where you learn the attributes of public speaking, and that's given me a great boost. You learn to pace what you're saying, and the good thing with the technique is it does slow you down, so it gives you more time to think. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Barry.
Thank you very much.
Would you be kind enough to take a winning ticket?
Oh, I'll be
Before we
fine.
close. Because that's your next duty.
Here we go then. This is the winning ticket.
Yes, please.
It's a yellow ticket, number 987.
Oh no, 977. Sorry.
987.
987.
Oh, I'll sit next to it.
Hi, you Alex. Thank you so much. Say hi to the camera.
Right.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we have the vote of thanks by Terry Smith?
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Barry, for that wonderful, interesting talk. I have to agree that the way you can deliver is amazing. Having had a summer, it's brilliant what you've achieved. And fellows, please, can you, the normal way, thank Mr. Barry.
Thank you. Any other business?